Hey, listeners. In today's episode, we dig into happiness. In my opinion, happiness is a big part of why we even want to explore abundance in the first place. My takeaway from this episode was that even defining what happiness is harder than you'd think. The three of us have differing opinions on what it is and how to find it. So I hope you get some ideas that help you on your journey toward happiness and abundance. Listeners, welcome to Tales of Abundance, Why Settle for Less? As always, I'm here with Dr. John Oberg and also frequent contributor Anthony Marino in the house today, and we are going to talk in happiness. We had a recent episode on happiness, and today we're just going to chop it up and discuss our feelings on happiness. So, John, I know you wanted to get clarity starting out, like what is happiness, right? And define it for us. So
yeah, I don't know that I have like the textbook definition of happiness, but I think that people often talk about happiness and they talk about joy and they talk about those things intermingled. And I don't care which word you use. Like either one can use whatever word you want. I definitely don't want to get into a definitional debate, but there's something you have because you choose to have it. Let's call that joy for today. And there's something that is a feeling that you chase, and let's just call that happiness that's fleeting, right? And so both of those things are things. There are probably people that have really smart definitions of that, as they think through it. But like when I talk about this with my family, we talk about joy being like a choice that you make, and happiness is something that you either chase or you get when you chase something else. I would say that a life well lived leads to happiness, and then you choose joy even in the face of suffering. And so, but anyway, there's something that is a choice, and there is something that is a response to something you've done.
Anthony, you have I have a feeling you disagree with that.
It's not so much that I disagree, but I did do a little bit of research on this, and I think everyone's heard of the Founding Fathers.
Once or twice.
Okay. And they started off the Declaration of Independence with the right to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. Well, how do you think they defined happiness? Do you think we should maybe go back and think about what those guys were thinking about versus what the modern world thinks about happiness?
Please do.
I'd be even more interested in what they defined as the pursuit of happiness.
Well, that's what they were talking about.
Right.
The actual pursuit of it. So let me read it to you. Living a virtuous, meaningful life versus what we do or what we focused on, which is feeling good, emotionally satisfied. So you'll see the juxtaposition here between the modern version of happiness and what the intent of our founding fathers was. I'm not saying they were right or wrong. I found it very interesting. Flourishing through liberty and virtue versus enjoying comfort and success. Freedom to pursue moral and civic goals, which I found very interesting from the perspective of pursuit of happiness for the good of others. And lastly, they were rooted in classical enlightenment versus rooted in individual emotion or achievement. So when we talk about it, I find that what they were talking about was more joyful.
Well, hold on. You're talking about the pursuit of something that leads to an outcome. Joyful, the way I've described it. And see, here's the problem, right? I think, yes, you're right, it's joyful, but there's also something else where you can be joyous in a moment of difficulty, or you can have gratitude, you can look for the silver lining, and that's a different thing than the pursuit of happiness. And so we just need to acknowledge there's two separate conversations. I think we're both having the same conversation about the pursuit of happiness, but there is also something else about, like, I can be joyful in suffering. There are people that have, end-stage cancer and have a very joyful, calm, peaceful life because they choose to look at things through a lens of gratitude. That's one thing. Then there's a separate thing, which is leading a virtuous life and pursuing outcomes that are, so those are just two separate conversations. And I think we bump into a problem when we have those two conversations, we conflate them together because they're two separate things. I happen to call one joy and one happiness, but that's a totally arbitrary definition. Like there's nothing like definitive about that. That's just the way that I've organized it in my head.
But when I hear Anthony discussing the founding fathers, my takeaway from that is they were focused on living a good life, service, making the world a better place, living in a certain way versus it all being laughs and giggles and some of the things that now, like, to Anthony's point or their point, today, so much of it, I think, comes because somebody watches a TikTok video or a YouTube clip, or they jump out of an airplane, or it's more moments.
I mean, you're getting a dopamine hit, and what you guys are both talking about is some form of delayed gratification, right? Where I would say, to make the point you're making, is that a life well lived leads to happiness, but chasing happiness directly, it's almost always fleeting. It's like a rainbow; you can never get to the end of it. So, I would agree with the way you've described the founding fathers view happiness, where what is a life well lived, and I think I'm still saying we should still carve out the other part of the conversation, which is you can also choose to be grateful in a really crappy set of circumstances that leads to something that is often conflated with this conversation, and separating the two allows you to have both of those things, which makes for a much better life.
Yeah, I feel like we've taken this discussion and turned it into a chili with beans and meat and everything else. And we got joy in there, we got happiness in there, and so forth. From the listener's perspective, when they see the title of this podcast, what are they going to be thinking about? They're going to be thinking about happiness. And the way people perhaps are thinking about happiness, they're thinking about it as a destination and a state of mind. My argument is, and we talked about this pre-production, that happiness in and of itself is just literally a literal thing that comes and goes. It may, and the come and the go can be a moment, it can be a day, it can be a year, it can be whatever it is, but it is a specific thing that occurs that makes you happy, versus a life well lived brings you something else, and define it any way you want. You can call it joy, you can call it peace of mind.
I don't think it is something else. I think it brings you that same happiness in a much more sustainable, larger dose. I think you're talking about delayed gratification for a much bigger, longer lasting dose of that thing. And I think joy is entirely separate. I think this is the problem, because when you chase something and you're chasing the wrong thing, you never find the thing you're looking for. Like this is the heart of, I think, what the conversation I was hoping, at least part of it, that I wanted to have.
Let me ask a different question. When have you overall been happiest in your life? And I'm not talking about a moment. I'm not talking about when you won the game or your child was born, or I'm not talking about those moments. I'm just talking day in, day out, month after month, for a year, for a time frame. Think back to the happiest. Like, when were you consistently happy?
That's what I'm struggling with, because I wouldn't define those feelings as happiness. I would define those feelings more broadly in peace of mind, security. It's a state of mind. It's a feeling of success overall, confidence, ego. Some ego gratification of what's been achieved. The happiness part, I always go back to the same thing. And I know it's boring, but the thing, speaking in front of 5,000 people and being congratulated and all that brought me some happiness in that moment. It didn't really embed itself in my, feeling of gratitude and keeping me settled and so forth. It was a thing. It was a great thing, and I moved on from it. Just like the game, it was here and it goes on. So I think the pursuit of, and then you can fill in the blank with whatever it is that you want it to be. If you want to call it happiness, great, call it. That's your version of where that you want to be in.
I'm going to clean this up. There's something you choose definitively, and that's a thing, gratitude, whatever. Mm-hmm. And there's something that is an outcome of a series of actions, whether short-term or long-term. That's the distinction I want to draw. Okay. Is that there are some things you can actually choose. I'm gonna call that joy for right now. You're using the term joy for something else, which by the way is totally appropriate. And we're getting hung up into this semantic debate, which is what I don't want to do. What I do want to do is clarify, like, there's a choice you get to make about some things. And there's other things where you pursue something, whether you pursue it in the instant or pursue it from the long term. Like, that's the conversation that's much more interesting on happiness for me, but not talk like there's a whole nother topic around I'm grateful despite my circumstances. That's something, and that can lead to that other thing, by the way. Right.
Well,
but I think, I really think that we're well served to draw a bright line between those two things, because when we conflate them, we get really more confused than we already are in the first 5 minutes of this conversation.
but I think Anthony's got questions he's asking for himself, right? Like, he's trying to understand happiness and thinking about his life. And, I asked the question, and when I said, when have you been the happiest? For me, yes, there's times where you win the award, you win the game, you have the moment. But lasting happiness for me is when I'm working on something greater than myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I am all in, and it's aligned with my beliefs, it's aligned with what I want to accomplish, what I want to give the world, and I am putting it. Some of it, the times have been when I worked the hardest, but I was aligned. And there have been other times where work did not bring me happiness because I didn't enjoy it, right? And I was working on something, and it might have just been simply I got burned out, or I was just doing it for the money. It's really hard, in my opinion, to be happy in those circumstances. So being aligned with mission, and gratitude, by the way, we couldn't talk about gratitude enough. Right. I mean, anybody that's that is grateful is going to be happy.
Yeah, I just think that there are times that you can be grateful in a crappy circumstance where you're not really happy because life is shit, but you're grateful for the things you do have, and you're not really happy in the way we're describing it. And I think there's also times that you can be happy even though you're not choosing to be grateful. And that's why I think you separate the two, because I think in a life well lived, my encouragement for myself and for my loved ones is to do both, right? But again, they're different.
Maybe, Anthony, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You're talking maybe more, today's world is more about pleasure and immediate gratification versus the founding fathers were more about mission and fulfillment.
Right. That was the point of that, was to point that out.
That's the big deal.
Yeah. And we're talking about a modern society. That's what we're dealing with today. So we're not going to go back to the founding fathers. I don't know, maybe in 100 years somehow that'll circle back. But one of the struggles that I wanted to bring up is so much of what drives us to the mood that we're in, right, or the state of mind that we're in, is out of our control. You can work your butt off to live the life best lived, but someone slamming into you at the red light, because they're on their cell phone, someone becoming ill, the layoff, you get laid off from your job, things that are out of your control, you've got to navigate that now. If you're trying to be quote unquote happy or in a peaceful state of mind, or, want to keep progressing yourself, you got to fight through those things that you don't control. And it's so much. I think it's far more out of your control than what's in your control. Especially now, the way things move so much faster. Circumstances change so much faster. Not to mention what, is sitting in front of us in terms of AI and the social media and so on and so forth. It's very, very difficult to remain in a really good mood all day long. You turn on the news, forget about it. You're dragged into the muck and mire of the day. And it's just something that, as we talk to our audience, what are they thinking? Oh, wait a minute. Happiness is being in a good mood all the time. Well, no, it isn't. It isn't that. So I don't know. That's what the struggle is. And that's why I think there's juxtaposition here. There's an argument to be made. And there is, it's definitely nuanced. It's nuanced like a black hole is nuanced. What's really in there?
There's some things that are really clear too. Like you just said a minute ago, like comfort, like I've said this to my kids, like comfort shouldn't be the long-term goal. Like it's a goal at moments and times, but like getting rid of friction and work in your life, like biologically, humans are designed to work. And so if your goal is not to work, like you're working against biology. And I think there's moments in time that's great, but even retirement is a political construct, not a biological one.
Well, we've talked about this in terms of AI, right? Like that, this is one of the concerns of AI. Now, we may think AI is going to create more jobs than it takes away or not, but one of the concerns is that that's not going to happen, and then people aren't going to work. But I know people that go through life, they don't work, and I don't know, they seem super happy to me, but you never know, right? Some people seem happy on the outside, and they're not on the inside. They find ways and they find things to keep them busy.
Well, yeah, I think work. Yeah, work, I mean, when I say work, I don't necessarily mean a job. I'm talking about being productive, and that can be gardening. Being productive in your garden is work.
Yeah, but we also know the people that retire, stop work. They're perfectly healthy. They retire, and then all of a sudden they die in 2 years because they don't know what to do with themselves anymore.
That's right.
That's a real thing too.
Holding on to happiness, or whatever we're defining as happiness, is not easy to do. You can be on the best vacation on the planet. Everything went great. You're on a sailboat. You're doing whatever you wanted to do, and everything is fantastic. And then you get to the airport to come home, and the flight's canceled, or the rent-a-car breaks down, whatever the case might be, and everything is now not happy. It just drags you down. And the battle to maintain what you had versus what you're facing is extremely difficult. And I think we get caught up in the moment of negativity and not let, that really great time that we had really wash over that. You know what? This is the price. This is the cost of all that other stuff. And I don't think people do that.
I think there's some though. I think this is where kids are such an interesting petri dish, right? Because kids, that stuff in many cases does just wash off, and there is not. And so then the question becomes, well, how did we get here? Like if I was a child at 5 years old and that didn't what's the problem? Like where do we go wrong?
Well, okay, let's go back to Anthony's point. You're on a vacation. You had the great vacation. You're on the sailboat and everything's perfect. And then you have troubles getting home. I've been there, right? I could tell a horror story of horror stories, once going to Vegas, once coming back from Costa Rica, about as bad of travel experiences as anybody could have, right? And I'm not going to say I made the best of them, right? Especially the Vegas one was pretty infuriating. But those are actually stories now that make them very memorable. And some good times came, especially the coming back from Costa Rica, and some good times came out of that deal. And to John's point earlier about gratitude, there is a decision that could be made to go into that and go, oh, well, here's an opportunity. For example, I ended up spending a night in Miami on the way home from Costa Rica, even though I had a direct flight from Austin to Costa Rica. Somehow I ended up spending a night in Miami on the way home. And it was, I missed a day of work because of it, or a day and a half and everything else. But, we went out, we had a nice dinner. There was a choice to make the best of it, right? And laugh. And so having gratitude or looking at it from how do I turn, this is cliche, but how do I turn lemons into lemonade?
Well, the choice leads to the virtuousness, which then leads back to the feeling maybe.
No, I get it. That's great that you were able to do that. The average human being, I'm not sure, can do that. And at least in my experience with several human beings that have been in these situations, or it's even the feeling that, shit, this vacation is coming to an end. And I got to go back to, the grind, if you will. And that kind of it takes a little bit out of you. And that's why I wanted to define, I was so adamant about defining the difference between the happy feelings, forget about calling it happiness, the happy feelings, and that your overall state of mind and your overall, I always call it settled. For me, there's a moment, there are periods of settlement. where it's like a Roger Clemens throwing a fastball. He can just fire it 100 miles an hour. It's going to, nip the corner nearly every time and strike out 21 batters. It's just a feeling of being settled. I'm settled and I got this. And half the things I'm doing unconsciously. It's just because in that, whatever it is, I'm an athlete in that
flow,
in that moment. And that's why I wanted to define the happy moments from the overall feeling. Because the other thing is true, it has been true in all of our lives, where we are unsettled. We're completely the opposite of being settled. And there are some happy moments still, but we are in a dogfight for some reason. And it could be any number of things, whether it's work, health, someone in your family's got an issue, whatever it could be. You got to now build a bunch of happy things to move into where you need to be to get back into a settled environment.
Do you? And the reason I ask that question is I think you're defining happiness right now the way we do it in the modern day, not where you started with the founding fathers, right? Like very much what you're talking about are experiences and external forces. And I think it starts in us, right? Like if I think of the happiest people and the people that are just a joy to be around, the people that are just always up, always happy, always see everything in an optimistic viewpoint, that starts with them. They just tend to think every day is a great day and they're really grateful for being alive and everything. They just always see the sunshine and the rainbows, right? And I think it's an opportunistic, and maybe it's because of the mission they're on in life or their comfort, but I think it comes from within. Like, I don't think it's these outside things. They create, again, we're getting into definitions, but more fun, entertainment, maybe joy in the short term, but I don't think those things actually create happiness. I don't think being on the sailboat in the blue Caribbean waters, as fantastic as that is, right? We'd all agree that's a fantastic day and part of a life well lived, but I don't think that actually creates happiness. It creates a moment.
Agreed. It totally agreed. You had a guest on, I forget his name, the gentleman who does the gatherings.
Andrew.
Yeah.
Andrew. He's where I want to be. Nothing that, and then after he leaves here, we have the floods down in Care County where he was very much involved in the recovery efforts and so forth. That guy was in such a joyful, settled place where everything he was doing was for the good of mankind. Totally selfless. It was perfection personified in terms of where you want to go. Now, how he got there, he ought to write a dozen books about how he got there. But at the same time, while I'll bet he's still in that positive state of mind, he had to endure one of the most horrific experiences in his life. And I wonder how that affected him in those moments.
I bet he was in his element and happy as hell, even diving in the water, trying to save people despite the flood. Like, knowing Andrew,
yeah,
that's where he wanted to be in that moment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, he was probably happy to be helping, and it wasn't going to affect him. He's not going to stop being the person who he was. Where I think honestly, the average person, myself included, is in many times unable to maintain that settlement because of some trauma or some set of circumstances. Even though I got a bunch of other stuff going great, money in the bank, blah, 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 something happens and all this other stuff, all of a sudden I'm completely unsettled, even though I really shouldn't be. Or the average person, not me, has trouble maintaining that state of mind.
So I think I just put my finger on why the distinction was so important to me. Like I was thinking about, like, why is this not important to Anthony like the way that I think it should be, and why in the world is it so important to me? And the answer is I'm a control freak. And so what I want to know is what skill can I develop to be joyful? My definition of joy, like where I can choose gratitude, like that's a skill set to choose gratitude in crappy situations. And I've had to develop that skill over time. And there's a separate, different skill to develop that, the long-term, let's call it broad-based happiness for whatever term. And that skill is about being on mission and being purposeful about what I'm called to do. And that's that life of virtue. So I think the reason the distinction is so important to me is because it is two different things I've had to practice. One being joyful and grateful. And that is one skill where it's seeing the world a certain way despite difficulty. And there's a different skill, which is understanding my purpose so that I can give back to the thing that lets me to be happy, even in light of difficult circumstances. I couldn't figure out why that was. I was wrestling with this.
Go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah. Don't want to correct anything, but we're talking too much about I have to do this, I have to do that. In order to have happy moments and have, back to the settled lifestyle, life's an orchestra. There are a lot of people and a lot of things involved that have to go right or can go wrong, that have a tremendous impact on how we get to what you're defining, right? You could have the best intentions and I'm going to live this life and I'm always going to be the guy out front and so on and so forth. But I'm sure Andrew has a community around him that is enabling him to be the person that he is, right? And if you have the wrong people or the people that are in your circle are having a tough time or whatever the case might be, it makes it much more difficult to have quote unquote happiness or a happy period of time in your life. So
we were talking about it without him in the room. I wish he was in the room, but I think he would tell you that he has selected those people. And he even said on the show, like, there are people that are uninvited, right? And so I think that the group of people and community around him, like, that's not an accident. And there are books written about the 5 people in your life, and you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And there are people that very deliberately choose their people, and there are people that let life happen to them. And by the way, I think that's true broadly with people in this world. Like, there are people that actively participate in their own life, and there are people that let life bounce them around wherever it's going to bounce them around. And I think that's a really material impact on the joy and the happiness you feel in your life.
John, actually, let me make one point. Again, back to where you started, Anthony. Andrew, I would say, is aligned very well with the Founding Fathers. Right? He's after mission. He's after contribution. He believes in God. He believes in his community, helping. It's back to that. But John, I would just challenge you a little bit. That's what works for you, and that might work. That's going to work for some of the having a system and very carefully planning who you're around. And I'm not disagreeing, by the way. If you're around happy, successful, positive, grateful people, that will make you more. I think
there are people that are born into it too, right? There are people whose parents set them up in that way, and they're very deliberate about it. And there are people that luck into it. I'm not suggesting, like, I've not been really great about saying, here are the 5, and I'm going to boot people out. And that's not been a thing I've done.
But I'm saying that's a good strategy, and for some listeners, that's probably exactly what they need. But I'm also thinking of people I know that just wander through life and they're really happy. Like, that's their thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, some of the people that just want to, take the extreme example. There's people that just go surf every day. They live in the back of a van. They hang out. They just figure, they don't have a plan for a week from now or even tomorrow. It's just, I'm going to go hit the waves and I'm going to...
I had a conversation this week with someone who met a homeless guy, and the person that I was talking to, very successful, works very, very hard. And the homeless guy's like, you're the chump. Like you're paying taxes to get my food paid for. I can sleep where I want to sleep. I can talk to who I want to talk to. I can do whatever I want to do. You're going to pay for my medical care. Like, it's all free. Like, who's the chump? And the guy that I was hearing the story from, I looked at him like, man, it's a very fair question.
Yeah. Right. I mean,
so I don't disagree that can't be a path.
Right. That probably doesn't work for you. Right. I mean, that would.
But I don't think that guy's any less happy than I am. He might be happier than
No, but what I'm saying is, if you were the surf bum and you didn't know where you were going to sleep or how you were going to pay for food tomorrow, you would probably have huge anxiety over that.
Yeah, but his purpose might be different than mine. That's the beauty of this, right? Is that like when you can acknowledge that everyone's purpose is radically different, and that like if you put anybody else in the world on my path, I have to believe it would make them miserable.
Maybe. I mean, there's other people like you or similar to you.
Totally. But I guess my point is like I don't believe that like I have like if you do it, in fact, I think it's really destructive. If I'm like you should do what I did or what I do, like I actually think that's a real path for destruction, not happiness. I think, I tell people this all the time. Like like I try to help people find their path. I don't try to help them find my path. And so if their path is the surf bum or the homeless guy or the doctor or the lawyer, like I don't have any judgment about that.
Right. I'm not saying you do. I'm just saying I think we're talking past each other. We're kind of arguing the same point, right? That one person, you have a system where you're saying cultivate this 5 and do that. Like you want control. You want to plan everything, and you are excellent at best systems and best practices.
Yeah, I don't think you heard me though, Randy. That's not what I was saying. That Andrew is very deliberate about choosing his community, very deliberate. And there are lots of people, and there are books written about that. You are the sum of those people, and there are people that are born into really great situations. So, but I'm not telling you like you have to go do that.
I heard you. I'm not saying Andrew. I wasn't disputing Andrew. I'm just saying there's different people with different things. But let's move on.
Yeah, 100%. No, I violently agree.
Yeah, okay. In fact, tell you what, listeners, let's go to break. We will have more of this discussion when we come back, and I think we're going to get into some of the tools and things that we think are important to finding happiness and some of the blockers in the way. Hey, it's Randy from Tales of Abundance. Is starting a business part of your journey? Do you have ambition but no clear path? Maybe you feel trapped in your current career. Do you want a real business that can produce $250,000 or more income for you and your family? We have an opportunity for a profitable business that can be part of your path to abundance. I want to personally invite you to see the proven system we've built. It's designed to give you that freedom and control you've been searching for. Visit premiumcabinets.com/abundance to learn more. That's premiumcabinets.com/abundance. All right, listeners, welcome back to Tales of Abundance, Why Settle for Less? And we've been talking about happiness. And let's get into John Anthony a little bit. What are just tools and tips? What did you see has helped you? What do you see helped others? What are things you might tell a listener if they just want to be happier? We've talked about gratitude a lot, right? We put a bow on that. Do we need to go deeper on gratitude? I don't think we could talk enough about gratitude, but I don't want to beat a dead horse.
Series of episodes for us. We need to do that.
Yeah, right. So what is the thing? You can't be sad if you're grateful, right? Like you're almost forced to be happy. Like your mind can't entertain both at the same time. So gratitude. We went deep there. We've talked about mission.
Yeah, I think, but back to where we were before the break. Like I think people have to find their path. I think that in my experience is that people people are generally happy when they're on the path that feels right for them, and they're generally not happy when they feel they're on the path that's for somebody else. And you see that in like companies where the company has a culture where it's driving people toward a thing and people aren't happy in that culture. And then back to the example used earlier with the surfer or the guy, the homeless guy. I really think that happiness is generally a virtuous life that fits someone's purpose for themselves.
I think that aligns with mission, right? I think it's whether it's defined or not defined, they're on the right path for them. And, maybe that's aligned with their religion, their beliefs, their faith, right? Where their God is telling them to go.
Yeah, and I don't think it has to be explicit. I've met a lot of people who are exactly on purpose and who are very focused on purpose, who couldn't actually tell you what their purpose is at all, but they are clearly in their purpose. And that's fine. I think that's, nothing wrong with that.
Okay. One of the things, now this came from a ayahuasca trip, but one of the questions I ask myself a lot, I have it on the wall in my office, is just asking God or asking the universe, what should I be doing right now? And just asking that question, it makes life easier. It's hard. It's hard to give up that control and get the ego out of the way. It's hard as hell. But when you actually do it, whether it's, part of some kind of a meditation or just simply asking the question, that has worked pretty effectively for me.
Yeah. So asking yourself, is what I'm doing or planning to do going to lead to the outcome that I really want? Or am I doing this because somebody's making me do it? And sometimes we're in that life or in that moment where we have to do that. I think a lot of, we sit here as, especially me, an older gentleman with life experience. And I think that a lot of, the pursuit of happiness or getting to a happier state, it comes with age as you learn to accept things. Mm-hmm. Think of the brooding teenager living in Westlake, going to a private school, good, baseball coaching, the good parents, intact household, and he's moping around the house, for whatever, no reason to be moping around the house, right? That same kid at, 35, after he's graduated college, got a good job, things are still good, married, maybe a kid, different guy, different person. So age will help. So maybe a focus could be, maybe that'll be a good podcast someday, is to bring in a guest that could help us help people at a younger age get to this point versus, the older you get, the more you accept.
You've had teenagers. Is there really hope?
Well, it wasn't for us. No, I take that back. Not really, but I will
because they're listening.
Well, they're listening. But yeah, I mean, I think as you get older and you've had these experiences, both good and bad, you're more accepting, and it's easier to have gratitude, because you've been through so much.
Were any of us, when we were teenagers, moping around? And that's very common today.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That was not maybe that because it wasn't me, but I don't think it wasn't my friends either. Like, I don't remember that at all. Maybe it's just so long ago I've forgotten, but I don't remember that shitty teenage attitude back then.
I seem to remember people that were teenagers with me that were pretty happy in their teenage years. I probably wouldn't put myself in that category. Like, I wasn't unhappy. Like, I had a good life in my teenage years, but being a teenager is tough.
Yeah, it is. It's hard. But Anthony, we've talked about that. You were moping. You were out doing all kinds of shit.
I saw the same thing that in my kids that I was battling against the establishment, against the parents. Yeah. I don't see it. I really, and I saw that in my kids, another way to put it is, you've raised some kids. Did they always listen to you? Did they always take your advice and counsel? So that's what I mean by brooding or, battling. You're trying to do something for their good, and they're fighting you on it. So they're fighting against the potential happiness that's there because they're not mature enough to see that what you're doing is good for them. So maybe brooding is too descriptive a term, pouting and so forth. I'm sure some more than others, but I think as you in a younger age and you're trying to figure out who you are.
See, I was thinking of it different though. I'm thinking the brooding is the good word, right? Like, there's so many teenagers now that are in there just little everything sucks and this sucks and I'm bored and why this, why that, and like, I don't remember that when I was a kid. Frankly, if I would have done that, I would have got a boot up my ass.
Yeah, the bored part wasn't something. I think there's so much stimulus now, and it's so short-lived that they have to fight to go to the next short-lived thing. And if it isn't there for them, then suddenly they're bored and they're not entertained. Maybe that's something that's real. I don't know. I mean,
let's bring it back to happiness, though. Like, so I think the real question was, what are the keys to finding happiness? Right? Yeah. What do you think they are?
Wow. We've talked about gratitude and mission and contribution. To me, those are the big ones, right? Is gratitude, mission, contribution. And it's different for different people, right? Some people, it's trying to build $1 billion business. Somebody else, it's volunteering at a homeless shelter, right?
Yeah. And I think, there are some people that have it figured out because they fell into it in their life. And there are some people that are trying it on their whole life. They're, try it on. And I haven't put much thought into why that is, but I think, until you find it.
Some of it's genetics.
I'm sure.
Right? Some's genetics. Some is where you, like, the family you were born into.
Yeah.
right? If you're born into a great family that's supportive, you're born on third base.
It's easier, but doesn't get you home.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're born on third.
Sure, absolutely.
If you grow up in a crappy, I don't care if it's inner city or it's redneck paradise, whatever, and everybody's in, shitty houses or trailer houses and people are doing drugs or meth and gangs around you, okay, you're behind. It's harder. But then there's people that there's still people that grow up in those circumstances that are super happy.
Yeah, I mean, and you just brought up something, everything you just listed to me fits inside the U.S. And, what we haven't talked about is is this different in other countries and other parts of the world? And, my experience, I've been to, other parts of the world where the happiness seems to be abounding everywhere. And the economic gain and measures of U.S. economic success would be nowhere to be found. And they did not appear to be correlated during that day.
So agreed. I see it in, I've spent a fair amount of time in Central America, the Caribbean, and yes, it's abundantly clear they're probably happier than we are, even though they have far less on average. So why is that?
I mean, they have what they need. I think that you can focus on the things you don't have that you want, or you can focus on what you have. And I think that choice impacts your happiness quite a bit. That particular bias matters a ton.
I think it's back to gratitude, but I also think a lot of it, those people tend to be very family orientated and they're focused on their family. They're more concerned with having a good family and spending time with their family than they are working on their business or their job.
Yeah.
Right?
Relationships seem to matter. Where they place the importance of personal relationships, seems to be different.
Yeah. They tend to be much more religious.
Yeah.
They tend to be, very Catholic, all the Latin American countries, or a lot of them you've gone to.
I wasn't going to say it, but I'm glad you did.
Okay.
Andrew Tull, Catholic.
But they're more religious. All right. I mean, that would be my takeaways, right?
Blue zones would, if you look at any of the research from Blue Zones, faith was one of the things. Community was certainly one of the things. There's some really interesting findings in that Blue Zone report. And I think about if you watched, I think it was, I can't remember, maybe it was Bourdain or somebody did the Blue Zones documentary series, and it doesn't seem like it was Bourdain, but they went to Sicily, and man, the people there are just so happy, I mean, guys 90 years old walking up and downhill miles a day in terms of health and just.
Well, that's one thing. Exercise, right?
Yeah, sure.
Instead of getting in our car, eating all the carbs and the food, our diet, they're eating probably better, cleaner food.
It was cleaner carbs in Sicily, but yeah.
Well, but cleaner food, fewer sugars, preservatives, all that type of stuff. They walk, they ride a bike, they're getting exercise, they're getting sunlight. They don't have time. Life's harder. They have to accomplish stuff.
Yeah.
Right? They can't just go to the grocery store and buy or have Uber Eats or whoever deliver their crap and instead sit and play video games or be on social media all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd come at it a little bit different in that some of the populations that you talked about have different expectations, right, and different opportunities. So someone living in a difficult, what appears to be a difficult environment, whose, the hierarchy of needs are met in terms of survival and food and, sustenance, with no expectation that they're going to have a big screen TV and a big car and all that other stuff, can be extremely happy because they're providing for their family. And we kind of glossed over it a little bit, but it doesn't matter how you feel. If the people around you aren't happy for whatever reason, it's going to drag you down. And to me, that's really where the answer to your question is, what will make you happy? Is, to me, am I making the people around me happy? Am I facilitating their opportunity to be happy? And am I succeeding at that? And if I am, there's a very good chance that I'm going to be in a very settled, happy place.
You have a quote about that I've heard multiple times. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, you're only as happy as your unhappiest child.
Yeah.
I don't know who I stole that from. Thank you, whoever that was. Definitely, I didn't think it up on my own.
First time I ever heard it was from you, and a lot of people have heard that from people as I've kind of shared that quote. But there's just so much truth in that.
Yeah, and I would expand it to you're only as happy as the unhappiest person in your life. So yeah, just and again back to the other cultures and other places in the world, it really comes down to that. No matter what their economic ceiling or their lifestyle ceiling might be. So as we all know, very wealthy men and women who have sold businesses for tens and hundreds of millions of dollars and miserable.
Yeah.
They're just miserable for whatever reason. I don't even want to try to figure out why it is.
Well, let's dig. You don't want to talk about it. Let's dig into it. I mean, high achievers, right? Like we've talked about this in the past. There's high achievers that are miserable. You see people that are very successful and they hate life and they become alcoholics or they become drug addicts or they kill themselves. And to the outside world, these are the successful people. So why aren't they happy?
Well, I mean, first of all, to part of the outside world, I think there are people that just the Dalai Lama probably wouldn't feel that way, right? I think there's a lot of people in the faith community that would see that as being misguided. I think there's a lot of therapists that would see that as misguided. So I think, but by and large, I think we've got a marketing engine in this country that shows you what needs to be shown so that you go buy their product or service. Like the amount of times we get influenced about what expectations should want to be because of the logo, be like Mike. It's a whole series of commercials, and so I think that's a part of it is that we have a marketing engine influencing us for the benefit of the marketing engine, not for the benefit of society. That's a big, big, big one.
I think that's true. I would also say comparison, right? What's the saying? Comparison is the thief of joy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so many people that are so successful, but they compare themselves to the people around them and they feel like a loser.
It's just about norms, like societal norms. I think that's a really big deal in the U.S. I don't know that same thing happens in Central America as much, or if it happens. I mean, Anthony, you've been throughout Europe a ton. Did you see that type of comparison in kind of non-urban situation, like maybe in Paris, London, whatever? But when you were in not the kind of urban centers of Europe, did you see that same thing?
No, you don't. You don't see that. But that said, the high achievers, the big money people of Europe or China, Southeast Asia, they and the United States, they have there is a population of them or a group of them that become egomaniacs, and they feel that they're above everybody else and nothing, so they can do whatever they want to do. They can have, they put their family second, and they don't, and as a result of that drags them down because that always turns out to be a mistake. And so selfishness, and we've talked about selfishness in the past, I think rears its ugly head with an overachiever. You see it with athletes. You see it in all walks of life. So,
I also think just values and beliefs. I think some people have sold their soul to the devil. Maybe not literally, but they have pursued something that doesn't align with their mission. It doesn't align with their core beliefs, and I think it eats them up.
I think there's identity problems too, like where people, they tie up their identity with their work and their work isn't truly their identity. And
right.
that I mean, we could have a whole episode about identity and how identity can get sideways. And the thing we haven't talked a lot about, we've touched on it, but is like just the societal norms. Like we live in communities, small and large, that have a set of norms, and sometimes those norms don't serve happiness. We measure as a country gross domestic product, not gross domestic happiness, where there are countries we've talked about that measure gross domestic happiness. And so, those are some choices we make, and that's.
I'm also just thinking, back to Anthony's like on the yacht, but a lot of the best times I have is just having lunch with a friend or a group of people and sitting around and talking, laughing, whether it's friends, family, kind of back to these other countries. I mean, but a lot of times those things, I think, bring more happiness than the short term of some of the stuff that we think about, right?
Yeah, we talked about the fact that we're made to work. We're also made to be in community. Like humans are a community animal. That's just true.
All right, let's put a bow on this thing. Anything else? Any parting comments, thoughts, takeaways?
No, I think it was it's a good discussion. It's nuanced. It's not a right or wrong answer. It's not a final destination. It's work right up until, that final day comes. That you have to, be conscious of what you're doing and what you want to do and who you're impacting. Yeah. And I think you add all that together and that can get you to a good place.
I think everyone's answer is different too. Like what works for me may not work for you. So you may not find the right answer by talking to me or talking to you. You might have to figure it out on your own or try some different things on. But I think that's the work to be done. Like, and it's not hopeless, right? There are things people can do to impact their happiness. And that's a choice you make to invest that time in that way if you choose to.
Yeah. I'm just thinking back to episodes back, Dr. Dustin Williams was on, and he just talked about taking one step to the right when it comes to health and exercise. I think the same thing applies here. I've thought a lot about that since that episode. Just taking one step to the right on happiness would be a good first step for a lot of people, whatever that looks like. So
that's the right bow. We should stop there.
All right. Well, listeners, John says stop there. We're stopping there. Thank you as always for listening. Subscribe, download, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, and go to the website, talesofabundance.com for free tools. Download the podcast wherever you get podcasts. And John, Anthony, thank you. Great conversation as always. Listen and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Click follow for more content like this, or go to talesofabundance.com to join our community and get free tools.